What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Network and show where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network as well as on the USA Network, because today we're talking Season 1, Episode 2 of Straight Up Steve Austin, featuring special guest Sal Vulcano. Now, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, if I'm not mistaken, a.k.a. Sal from Impractical Jokers. Now, I loved the first episode last week with Rob Riggle, very good show. This one I loved 10 times more just because obviously, I'm a fan of Stone Cold, because if I wasn't, why would I be watching the show? I'm a big fan of Impractical Jokers, and I also love wrestling, and they have covered all three of those things here. A lot of Stone Cold, a lot of Sal, a lot of wrestling, so this was a really, really fun episode. They meet up in Los Angeles. I think it was Sal who actually flew to him to film the show. I think that's where Steve is living now, in Los Angeles, full-time. The Broken Skull Ranch is no more. But yeah, they meet up in Los Angeles. Sal says straight off the bat, this is crazy for me, because obviously he grew up a big wrestling fan. He's a big Stone Cold guy. So to be sitting in Stone Cold's car to kick off this show is pretty fucking cool. Sal then talks about turbulence that he's had on flights, because he talked about the flight over from wherever he was, probably the East Coast. Because I think they still live in New Jersey, New York, something like that, Rhode Island. He talked about the turbulence that he had on the flight from there to Los Angeles to meet Steve. He also admits that he doesn't wear cologne. Don't know why. He admits he also has a girlfriend, which I did not know. He talked about his girlfriend not wearing cologne. And then out of nowhere, Steve, they're driving in his car, and he just goes right off the road, onto the beach, and into the fucking water. And Sal says, I thought you were having a stroke, because he thought he was gonna do a Yui and just pull around. No, he went right into the water. Like, he drove into the water, and I'm thinking, okay, they went in far enough, they'll turn back now, but Steve literally went, all the way in, and it's because he has a Panther water car, I guess. I've never seen one of these things before, but I guess it goes from a car to a boat, like a not a motorboat, but I don't know, a water boat, like a paddle boat, I don't know, something like that. It's basically a boat, because it's in the water, and they're floating, and he's steering, and he can go fast. It's like a speedboat, whatever. It's pretty amazing. Sal is shitting his pants because he can't believe what just happened. He was freaking the fuck out. They just drove right into the water. It was pretty cool. Then he shares his story while they're on the water about him puking in a monster costume, and how he was wearing a condom, or he was supposed to, I don't know, something really fucking weird that he had to do as a punishment for one of the shows, for one of the episodes of Impractical Jokers. It was a really funny story. He also talks about how he has a replica IC championship at home, Intercontinental Championship belt, back at his house. And he's like, oh yeah, it's my favorite title. I'll be on phone calls, and I'll be wearing it around the house, which is super cool. And then he gets to hold Steve's title. Steve brings his replica IC championship that he was given after he won it for the first time back in, the mid-90s. The old school, the title that we have now, but not the white strap. It's the black strap, which is so cool. Sal's marking out on the inside and the outside at this point. And then he steps in the ring to lock up with Lance Archer of New Japan fame. He was also in WWE for a very brief period as Vance Archer. And now he's Lance Archer over in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So he locks up with him. And also he locks up with Stone Cold, which has to be a dream come true for Sal. And then they start doing bumps, and he's a little scared at first, but he goes through with it because he's a big-ass fan of wrestling, so why not? He does the bumps. He recalls going to WrestleMania 2 and being, near the front row for that show and having such a great time and all this other stuff. So they wrap up the wrestling training there, and Stone Cold stuns Archer on the way out, which is pretty funny. And then from there, they go to the El Segundo Brewing Company, which is where Stone Cold makes his, Broken Skull beer. His IPA. I think that's where it comes out of, and I guess the headquarters are in Los Angeles, which I did not know. Sal takes a sip like Rob Riggle did last week. He says he likes it. And this I did not know. I was watching with Alexis. She's a big Impractical Jokers fan, so of course she already knew this. I did not. That Sal was in the bar business for over a decade. I had no idea about that. And then he said he put all of his life savings into a bar company right around the time they started doing Impractical Jokers. That's so fucking cool. Again, this is probably common knowledge, but again, I didn't really know this, but he talks about how the Impractical Jokers, all four of them, met while they were freshmen in high school, and they've had a friendship for over 20 years before they even started doing the show in 2011. And he talks about how, they'll be filming all week, They'll be doing stuff on the weekends. And then even on their days off, when they could be doing really anything else, or they're sick of each other, whatever, they still want to hang out and go see a movie or do whatever. And they all bond over different things, which is super cool to hear about. Like, Sal and Q are wrestling fans. Two of them will be like big music fans or whatever, so on and so forth. So they all bond over certain things, which is awesome. Anyway, Sal then tells a story about drinking in New Orleans. He doesn't say that it was for WrestleMania 34. It very well might have been. I don't think it was, but it could. I feel like if it was, he would have said so. But he says that it was with Q, and that's who he went to New Orleans with for WrestleMania 34 weekend last year, because he was in the front row of Raw that week. So I feel like that's what he was talking about, but I could be mistaken. Anyway, he said that he was drinking heavily that night, and that all of New Orleans was closed. And there was no place for him to eat, so he got desperate and ate a fucking quesadilla out of the trash. And apparently he's super like OCD and germophobic, like stuff like that. But he could not have cared less in that moment, as just being drunk, and ate a quesadilla out of the garbage from someone else's trash, which is so gross. But it was a funny story. He also talked about how he had never cursed before. I don't know if he doesn't curse now. I'm not sure about that. But at least as a kid, he never used to swear. And there was one time he got so mad at his mom, he was behind his bunk bed, and he gave her the middle finger, but she saw it as she was walking away. So he wanted to do it like cowardly, like we all would if we're all like fucking 12, 13, 14 years old. I know I've done that a few times. So he does that, but they had like this mirror on the closet in his room at that point where she saw him flip her off. And then she dragged him across the room by his hair and put his fucking mouth under the sink to wash it out, even though he never swore. He was like, "Oh, why didn't she just put my finger under the water? Because that's what I flipped her off with, not my mouth." I didn't swear. It was just a great story. And then to close out the episode, Sal just says, "This was a highlight of my life. I super enjoyed it." But then to close out the episode, they play Keg Bowl. So they have these kegs set up like bowling, like bowling pins, and you have to, steer a keg into a pile of other kegs and see how many you can knock down. Sal pretends that he's never played it before, but he obviously has, being in the beer business for so long, being in there for over a decade. He wins it. He beats Stone Cold. He can't believe it, but he plays it off cool, and then Steve Austin is like, I feel like that's not the first time you played Keg Bowl. And he's like, maybe not. So he plays it off cool. But obviously Sal has experience in that area, which is why he beat Steve Austin. And he did jokingly say at one point that the winner of this will get your title, Steve, your IC title. And Sal did technically win. So maybe, Steve can pass him the torch, can pass him the Intercontinental Championship belt. But anyway, they do a beer bash to close off the episode. You could tell that Sal is just living life at this point. And he says, "I've made it," to close out the episode. And then Austin just says, "What a day at the office." This episode was awesome. I fucking love this episode. You don't even have to be a fan of Stone Cold or Sal in order to enjoy this episode. They just had a lot of funny stories. The chemistry is off the charts. Even if you're just a wrestling fan and not, I guess if you're a wrestling fan, you're a Stone Cold fan, but like, even if you've never seen Impractical Jokers in your life, you will love Sal. If you've never seen wrestling in your life, or have never really been a fan of wrestling, and you're only watching this for Sal, you will love this episode too. It's fucking awesome. So check it out on the USA Network. I fear that the show peaked early, and this is only the second episode. Thankfully, the rest of the episodes are shaping up to be pretty solid. Next week we have, I'm not a big football guy, but I believe he is the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, or one of the quarterbacks, whatever, Baker Mayfield. I know I've heard his name before. He's going to be on the show next week with Stone Cold. The week after that is the man, Becky Lynch, for all you wrestling fans out there. So a lot of cool episodes in the can coming up in the next few weeks. At any rate, guys, thank you for checking out this episode, Season 1, Episode 2 of Straight Up Steve Austin with Sal Vulcano. Great episode. You can check out my review of it, all my other reviews of Straight Up Steve Austin and Ms. and Mrs., also on the USA Network, and everything else here on Network and Chill, and all the other content I put up on the channel daily by subscribing today. Speaking of new content, the photo shoot episode that aired on The Big Show on Friday, I've yet to watch it, will not review it until Friday. Or it aired, I'm sorry, after Raw and Monday night. I won't be talking about it until Friday. So subscribe today. You'll get that when it comes out on Friday morning. Until then, we have hashtag AskGSM on Wednesday, WrestleRant radio excerpts on Thursday. So it's a big week coming up here on the YouTube channel. So there is not a better time to subscribe for daily content. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, subscribe, and share the video as well. All that stuff is greatly appreciated. On that note, guys, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and in the words of Stone Cold himself, I'll catch your ass down the road.